After aiding a lost alien girl over the mountains, 30 starships encircled his cave the next day. HFY the wind swept across the peaks of the Koreth Mountains with a sharp, icy bite. Snow glittered like scattered diamonds under the pale morning sun. Elias Van adjusted his scarf and tightened the straps of his heavy backpack. He had crossed these mountains many times, but today the air felt different, alive, almost watching. He paused on a ridge, surveying the endless stretch of white and jagged rocks. His eyes caught movement below, near a narrow cliffside path. At first, he thought it was a snow hare or some mountain goat. But as he squinted, he saw a small figure, shivering, curled into the snow like a fragile piece of glass. Elia's heart skipped a beat. No human could have survived alone in this place, especially not a child. He carefully descended the ridge, his boots crunching softly in the snow. The closer he got, the more he realized this was no ordinary child. The little figure had luminescent skin, pale blue that glowed faintly in the sunlight. Her eyes were large, almost too big for her face, and shimmered like liquid silver. Tiny wings, delicate and translucent, rested on her back, trembling with every gust of wind. She looked up at him with wide, fearful eyes. Elias froze for a moment, unsure what to do. He had encountered strange things in his years exploring, but never anything like this. His first instinct was caution, but seeing her shiver in the cold, he knew hesitation would be cruel. "Hey, it's okay," he said softly, keeping his voice low and steady. "I'm not going to hurt you." The alien girl's eyes widened further and she took a small step back. Elias crouched, lowering himself to her level, spreading his hands in a gesture of peace. "I'm Elias. I can help you. You're not alone," he said, pointing to himself and then to her. She tilted her head, studying him. Then slowly she held out one tiny hand. Elias smiled, careful not to make any sudden moves, and gently took it. Her skin felt warmer than he expected, almost soft like warm silk. "Okay, let's get you somewhere safe," he murmured. The path down the mountain was treacherous. Snow covered jagged rocks, and icy ledges threatened to give way with every step. Elias moved slowly, guiding her with a steady hand on her back, letting her cling to his arm. She was light, almost like holding a large feather, but her wings fluttered nervously, brushing against his coat. "You can't fly?" he asked gently, noticing her wings. She shook her head and a small, almost musical sound escaped her lips. Elias smiled. "That's okay. We'll walk together." The journey was long. Snowstorms and gusts of wind tested their patience, but Elias' determination never wavered. He shared small pieces of his ration with her, and though she didn't eat much, she seemed to find comfort in the act. Every now and then she pointed at something, a rock, a distant peak, or a strange symbol etched into the ice, and Elias nodded, pretending to understand. By mid-afternoon, the cold began to bite harder. Elias noticed frost forming on the girl's wings. He knew they had to find shelter soon, or the cold could be dangerous. Scanning the landscape, he spotted a cave nestled into a rocky cliff. It wasn't far, but reaching it meant crossing a narrow ledge above a frozen drop. "Almost there," Elias whispered, more to himself than to her. The girl's grip on his arm tightened. Her wings trembled. Elias crouched slightly, letting her climb onto his back carefully. He moved slowly, testing each step before committing his weight. The wind howled, making the ledge slippery, but Elias' steady hands and careful movements kept them safe. Finally, they reached the cave entrance. Elias helped her down and she looked around, eyes wide with awe. Inside, it was sheltered from the wind and snow, with room for a small fire. Elias gathered some dry sticks he had packed and, using his small lighter, started a gentle flame. Warmth spread through the cave, and he could see the tension leave the girl's body. "They're safe now," he said softly, smiling. The girl knelt near the fire, her wings folding neatly behind her. She made a soft cooing sound, almost like a song. Elias watched her, fascinated. She was not human, yet there was something deeply familiar about her expressions and gestures. It reminded him of the bond humans shared when caring for someone small and vulnerable. He decided to call her Lyra. It was a name that felt gentle and light, just like her. Lyra, he said, pointing to her. She tilted her head and repeated a soft, musical sound which made Elias chuckle. Close enough. You like that? She nodded, a small smile forming on her face. Elias had survived harsh mountains before, but today he realized something more profound than survival. It wasn't about endurance or strength. It was about care, empathy, and trust. He could see it in Lyra's eyes, the quiet understanding that he had become her protector, and she had chosen to trust him. As night fell, the wind outside intensified, but inside the cave, the warmth of the fire and their shared presence created a small, safe world. Elias shared more of his food, though Lyra only nibbled a bit, her attention mostly on him. "You've been lost long?" Elias asked gently, pointing at her and mimicking a question. Lyra tilted her head and made another musical sound. Elias nodded slowly. He couldn't understand her words, but he didn't need to. Her gestures, her eyes, her trust, all spoke louder than any language. Hours passed. The storm outside raged, but inside, a quiet bond formed. Elias told her stories of Earth in gestures and drawings, mountains, rivers, animals. Lyra responded with small sketches of glowing symbols, strange and beautiful, that seemed almost like a code. Elias couldn't decipher them, but he admired the creativity. Sleep came slowly, but when it did, Elias and Lyra rested near the fire. Her wings, now still, reflected the flickering flames, giving her an ethereal glow. Elias felt a sense of wonder he hadn't felt in years of exploring. Not wonder at the mountains, nor at the stars above, but at the unexpected encounter that had brought him here. He realized that today wasn't just a journey across mountains. It was the beginning of something larger, a story of connection between worlds. And though he didn't know it yet, his simple act of helping a lost alien girl would ripple far beyond the peaks of the Koreth Mountains. Outside, the wind continued to howl, but inside, warmth, trust, and hope created a small universe of their own. Elias closed his eyes, feeling the soft weight of responsibility and the gentle presence of a being not of his world. And somewhere in the distance, beyond the icy peaks, stars shone brightly. Unaware, perhaps, that morning light filtered softly into the cave, touching the snow outside and making the ice crystals sparkle like tiny stars. Elias stirred, stretching his stiff muscles from the long night. Lyra was already awake, her wings softly fluttering as she moved toward the fire. She looked smaller in the morning light, fragile yet filled with quiet energy. Elias smiled at her. "Good morning, Lyra," he said, his voice gentle. She tilted her head, a musical trill escaping her lips, which he understood as her way of saying good morning too. He looked around the cave and saw the tracks of their climb the day before, the small patches of snow they had carried inside on their boots, and the scattered sticks that had become their fire. Everything reminded him that survival was not just about strength, it was about attention, care, and planning. "Let's get some breakfast," Elias said, reaching for his rations. He handed her a small piece of dried fruit. Lyra hesitated at first, but then took it delicately, tasting it with a cautious curiosity. Elias chuckled. "See, humans make good food." She cooed again, smiling faintly, a small gesture that warmed his heart. Elias spent the morning carefully observing Lyra. She was curious about everything: the flickering flames, the way the shadows moved across the cave walls, even the patterns of frost on the rocks. He noticed that when she touched something, she seemed to sense more than just its shape, almost as if she could feel its history. "You have a gift, Lyra," he said softly, though he doubted she understood his words. Still, the tone mattered, and she glanced at him, wings fluttering slightly. Elias realized that understanding did not always come from shared language, it could come from patience and expression. By mid-morning, Elias decided it was time to teach Lyra a few simple survival skills. They started with the fire. He showed her how to arrange sticks in a small pile, how to shield the flame from wind, and how to blow gently to strengthen it. Lyra watched intently, wings quivering with excitement. When she finally managed to keep a small flame alive, she clapped her tiny hands and let out a musical trill that echoed through the cave. Elias laughed, his own joy reflected in her eyes. "Good job," he said. "You're learning fast." Next, Elias wanted to help her understand the surroundings. He took out a small notebook and drew simple maps of the cave and the nearby mountain trails. Lyra watched, fascinated, and tried to mimic his drawings with her glowing fingers. She drew symbols that glowed faintly, different from anything he had ever seen. Although he couldn't understand the meanings, he recognized the effort as a form of communication. It was a bridge between their worlds. Elias then taught her how to find safe snow patches to drink from and how to identify areas where the ice was thin or dangerous. Lyra listened carefully, sometimes tilting her head in thought, sometimes flapping her wings softly as if testing the air around her. Elias realized that even in a strange world, the human way of teaching, patience, repetition, and encouragement worked. Lunch came in the form of more rations, and Elias shared stories while they ate. He mimed hunting scenes, illustrated with sketches in the snow, and even acted out encounters with mountain creatures. Lyra watched intently, her eyes wide with wonder. She tried to mimic his movements, copying his gestures, and even attempted a few funny expressions that made Elias chuckle loudly. "You're brave," Elias said finally, pointing to her and then to himself, trying to communicate a simple truth, that she had survived, that she had courage, and that together they could face challenges. Lyra's wings fluttered in agreement and she leaned close to him, a gesture of trust that touched Elias deeply. As the day progressed, the snowstorm outside returned, howling against the cave walls. Elias could hear it rattling the rocks and sending cold drafts through small cracks. Lyra looked worried, so he took her hand and held it firmly. "Don't worry," he said. "We're safe here." "You're safe with me." She nodded, the tremble in her wings slowing as she felt his calm presence. Elias realized that care was more than physical survival, it was emotional. He spoke softly, telling her about Earth, the sky, the animals, the oceans, and the forests. He drew pictures in the snow, towering trees, rolling rivers, and golden fields. Lyra responded with glowing symbols, arranging them carefully in patterns. Elias watched, fascinated, as these patterns seemed to convey stories, emotions, and perhaps even gratitude. By late afternoon, Elias decided to take a short walk outside the cave, just enough to stretch and gather fresh snow for water. Lyra insisted on following him, holding tightly to his arm. They stepped into the crisp air together, the storm quieter than before. Snowflakes danced around them, sparkling in the fading sun. "Look, Lyra," Elias said, pointing to the distant mountains. "They look big and scary, but we made it yesterday. We can handle them." Lyra tilted her head and looked at him, her silver eyes reflecting the mountains. She stepped forward, placing a small hand in his again. Elias smiled. It was not just a moment of trust, but a shared understanding, that even in an alien world, empathy and courage could create connection. Elias then decided to test her abilities gently. He placed a small object on a snow-covered ledge and asked her to retrieve it. At first, she hesitated, unsure of the icy footing, but Elias stayed close, guiding her with encouraging words and gestures. Slowly, she reached the object, picked it up, and held it triumphantly. She looked up at Elias, her eyes shining. He clapped quietly, proud. "You see, you're stronger than you think," he said, "and smarter too." The hours passed, and as the sun dipped behind the peaks, Elias noticed Lyra's wings fluttering less nervously. She had grown more confident, more comfortable in his presence. They returned to the cave, carrying firewood and fresh snow. Inside, Elias started another small fire and they sat together, watching the flames dance. "Lyra," Elias said softly, "you're not alone anymore." You don't have to be afraid." She leaned closer, resting her head slightly against his shoulder. Elias felt a warmth in his chest he hadn't expected, a deep connection that transcended words or worlds. Night fell and the storm outside raged again, but inside the cave they were safe. Elias handed her another piece of food. She took it gently, and he watched her eat, noting the small signs of life, curiosity, and comfort that had returned. He realized something profound. Sometimes the most important act of survival was not finding shelter or food or warmth, but giving someone hope, care, and trust. Lyra had survived the mountains not just because of her own abilities, but because he had chosen to act with compassion and patience. Hours passed, and the cave grew quiet. Lyra curled near the fire, wings folding softly. Elias sat nearby, drawing more pictures in the snow and talking quietly, as much for her as for himself. Outside, the storm howled, but inside, warmth and trust filled the space. Finally, Elias closed his eyes for a short rest, knowing that tomorrow would bring more challenges, but also more opportunities. He had helped Lyra not just survive, but begin to understand that humans could be reliable, gentle, and courageous. And somewhere in the vast mountains, unseen by him, a faint signal of light flickered across the sky, a distant pulse that seemed to notice the small acts of care and trust below. Elias did not see it, but the universe had already started watching. Tomorrow would bring new discoveries, but tonight, Elias and Lyra shared a quiet moment that would mark the beginning of a bond between worlds. In the quiet cave, with snow falling softly outside, he realized that human courage was not just in facing dangers, but in choosing to care for those in need, even when they were unlike anything he had ever seen before. And in that choice, a small alien girl found safety, warmth, and the first glimmer of hope in a strange world. Morning arrived slowly, painting the peaks of the Koreth Mountains in shades of soft gold and pink. Elias woke to the gentle warmth of the fire and the quiet cooing of Lyra, who was already awake, her silver eyes glimmering in the early light. She moved carefully around the cave, inspecting the small space as if ensuring everything was safe. Elias watched her, feeling a sense of pride. She had grown more confident in the last day, her wings no longer trembling as much, her trust in him evident in every careful step. He prepared a small breakfast, offering Lyra pieces of dried fruit and nuts. She ate slowly, savoring each bite, and occasionally glanced at Elias with a curious tilt of her head. He smiled, realizing that these small moments, the sharing of food, the gentle gestures, the quiet understanding, were creating a bond far stronger than words could express. As they sat together by the fire, Elias noticed something strange outside the cave. A flicker of light caught his eye, far across the mountains. He squinted, thinking it might be sunlight reflecting off ice. But then another flicker appeared, larger and more deliberate, moving across the horizon in a pattern that seemed almost organized. "Lyra, look," he said softly, pointing to the sky. She followed his gesture, her wings twitching with curiosity. Her eyes widened as she recognized the source of the lights. She reached out toward the horizon, making small, excited sounds. Elias didn't understand her words, but her gestures were clear. She was signaling something important, something extraordinary. Within moments, the sky began to shimmer with motion. At first, it was subtle, a few distant shapes gliding above the mountains, catching the sunlight. Then the shapes multiplied. 30 starships, each sleek and glowing with faint energy, appeared above the peaks, forming a perfect circle around the cave. The air hummed with quiet power, and even the wind seemed to pause in their presence. Elias felt a chill, not from the cold but from awe. He had seen many things in his life as an explorer, but never anything like this. The starships were enormous yet graceful, hovering silently above the mountains with precision that seemed almost alive. Lyra stepped closer to him, her small hand gripping his arm tightly. Her wings fluttered with excitement and a hint of fear. She pointed to the ships, then to Elia's, making musical sounds that conveyed a mix of pride and concern. Elia's nodded slowly, understanding that her people had arrived. "They came for you?" he asked quietly, though he wasn't sure he fully understood. Lyra nodded, eyes shining. She reached out and touched his cheek gently, a silent thank you for the help he had given her. Elias felt a warmth spread through his chest. The starships moved in unison, forming a perfect circle around the cave. Light beams scanned the ground below, harmless but precise. Elias noticed that the ships were not aggressive. They were observing, analyzing, perhaps waiting. The way they moved, synchronized and deliberate, showed intelligence beyond anything he had encountered. "Lyra, it's okay," he whispered, trying to calm her. "They're not here to hurt us. I think they're just curious." She tilted her head, wings quivering, and then made a soft musical trill. Elias understood that she was trying to communicate with them, though he had no idea how. Her small gestures, the light from her skin, and the trill of her voice seemed to interact with the ships. Slowly, Elias realized that she was bridging the gap between their worlds, acting as a messenger of trust and connection. Minutes passed, though they felt like hours. The starships held their positions, scanning, observing, and seemingly processing. Elias watched in awe, feeling the weight of the moment. Humanity had never been seen in this way before, not by these distant travelers of the stars. And here he was, a single human, standing beside a small alien girl, proving through simple kindness and care that humans were capable of compassion, intelligence, and courage. Then a beam of light projected from one of the ships, forming a holographic image in the center of the circle. Elias blinked, unsure what he was seeing. The image was of a being tall and elegant, shimmering with the same soft glow as Lyra, though larger and more defined. Its eyes were silver, intelligent, and calm. It raised a hand in greeting, and Elias instinctively raised his own in return. The being's voice was musical, melodic, yet the meaning of the words was strange and unfamiliar. Elias watched carefully, noticing patterns in its gestures. It was communicating through body language and tone as much as words. Lyra moved forward, her wings extending slightly, and responded with small musical notes and gestures of her own. Elias realized that she was translating, her way of bridging their languages. The alien being gestured toward Elias, pointing first to him, then to Lyra, and finally to itself. Elias understood the meaning. They had come because he had helped Lyra. His actions had been noticed, evaluated, and respected by an entire starfaring civilization. The realization struck him deeply. Humanity, often overlooked in the vast galaxy, was being observed and appreciated for its courage and compassion. Elias felt a surge of pride, not for himself alone, but for humanity as a whole. The simple, human acts of kindness, patience, and care were being recognized across the stars. He looked at Lyra, who beamed at him with a mixture of joy and relief. She had been safe, and now her people had arrived to see the results of their shared journey. The alien being extended its hand, and a small, floating device appeared, projecting images and symbols into the air. Elias watched, trying to understand. The images showed star systems, civilizations, and technologies far beyond human knowledge. Yet among all this advanced technology, what caught his attention was the recognition of empathy and cooperation. His small act of helping a lost alien girl had sparked a bridge between worlds. Lyra's small hands reached toward the floating images, glowing faintly as she interacted with them. Elias noticed that she seemed to be showing the aliens the story of their journey, the mountains, the snow, the fire in the cave, and the moments of trust they had shared. Every gesture, every symbol, told a story of human kindness, courage, and ingenuity. Elias took a deep breath. He realized that this was a moment of first contact, not in the typical sense of diplomacy or formal greetings, but through action, empathy, and shared understanding. The human's reputation, previously unknown to these distant travelers, was being formed not through war or conquest, but through care, compassion, and the willingness to help another being in need. As the morning wore on, the alien fleet began to shift slightly, maintaining their circle but moving closer. Their light beams swept over the cave, highlighting the fire, the small figures of Elias and Lyra, and the marks of their journey. Elias noticed that the ships emitted no weaponized energy, no threats, only observation and attention. He felt a sense of calm, knowing that these beings recognized him as a friend, not an enemy. Lyra climbed onto his shoulder briefly, resting her tiny head against his cheek. Elias felt her warmth and her trust, and he realized that their bond had become more than survival. It had become a bridge between species, between worlds, and between hearts. The alien being finally projected a large symbol in the air, glowing and intricate. Elias studied it carefully, recognizing shapes that resembled Lyra's glowing patterns. The meaning was clear: approval, acknowledgement, and perhaps gratitude. The humans had been observed and judged worthy, not for weapons or power, but for their actions, intelligence, and heart. Elias felt a swell of hope for humanity. If these travelers could see the value of compassion and courage in one human, what might they think of the entire species? The thought filled him with determination. Humanity had a place in the galaxy, not as conquerors, but as allies, innovators, and caretakers. As the sun rose higher, the alien ships began to slowly ascend, maintaining their circle for a few more moments before retreating slightly to hover above the mountains. Elias knew this was not a farewell but a promise of future encounters. The stars above seemed brighter now, filled with possibilities he had never imagined. He turned to Lyra, who was glowing faintly in the morning light, her eyes reflecting the sky. "We did it, Lyra," he whispered. "We showed them humans are something special." She tilted her head and cooed softly, a sound full of pride and joy. Elias knew that the mountains, the storm, and the cave had been only the beginning. The universe had noticed, and humanity's story among the stars was just starting. He felt a deep sense of connection, not just to Lyra, but to the galaxy itself. And in that quiet moment, surrounded by the echoes of the alien fleet above, Elias understood something essential. Courage, empathy, and kindness were universal languages. They could reach across worlds, inspire civilizations, and open doors that no technology alone could unlock. The Koreth Mountains were silent once more, the storm having passed, but the echoes of what had occurred lingered in the crisp morning air. Elias and Lyra remained in the cave, basking in warmth and understanding, ready for whatever the galaxy might bring next. For the first time, Elias realized that a single act of care could resonate across stars, and that humanity, in its small and simple ways, had the power to shine in the vast universe. The morning sun had climbed higher over the Koreth Mountains, illuminating the snow-covered peaks. With a dazzling glow, Elias and Lyra remained near the cave entrance, watching the alien fleet hover silently above. The 30 starships glimmered like a swarm of stars, their movements precise, careful, and deliberate. Elias could feel the quiet power emanating from them, a force of intelligence and curiosity rather than aggression. Lyra's wings twitched nervously as she glanced at him. Elias smiled reassuringly. "Don't worry, Lyra. They are here to understand, not to harm." She seemed to relax slightly, trusting him as she had since the first moment he helped her down the mountains. Suddenly, a beam of soft light descended from the largest starship. It formed a holographic platform in the air, and from it emerged a figure unlike any Elias had ever seen. Tall and graceful, with a luminous body that mirrored Lyra's faint glow, the alien stepped forward. Its eyes shimmered silver, full of intelligence and calm authority. Elias took a deep breath. This was first contact, truly astonishing first contact, and the weight of the moment pressed upon him. But he remembered Lyra, the journey through the mountains, the nights by the fire, and the small acts of care that had brought them here. He straightened his back and stepped forward, showing confidence, curiosity, and respect. The alien's voice was musical and melodic, a sequence of sounds that Elias could not understand directly. Yet the being's gestures were clear: open hands, calm posture, and an inviting motion toward him. Elias lifted his hand slightly, mirroring the gesture. The alien paused, studying him, and then made a series of subtle, flowing movements. Lyra stepped forward, glowing softly, her musical trills and delicate gestures connecting with the alien's language. Elias realized with a start that Lyra was acting as a translator of sorts, her small glowing patterns and melodic sounds bridging the gap between human and alien understanding. The alien pointed to Lyra, then to Elias, and finally extended one arm toward the holographic platform. Images appeared, showing scenes from their journey: the treacherous mountain paths, the snowy cliffs, the fire in the cave, and the moments where Elias guided Lyra with patience and care. Elias watched in awe as the aliens observed, silent and attentive, processing each gesture, each act of kindness. "They see everything we did," Elias said softly, more to himself than to anyone else. Lyra made a musical trill, almost a laugh, as if confirming his words. Her wings fluttered in excitement, her trust in him growing stronger by the moment. The alien made another gesture, pointing to Elias and then to a series of symbols in the air. The meaning became clear: recognition, approval, and understanding. Elias had proven humanity capable of qualities the aliens valued: intelligence, courage, empathy, and ingenuity. He realized with a surge of pride that this moment was not just about him, but about all humans. The holographic images shifted, showing other worlds, civilizations, and technologies far beyond human comprehension. Yet even in these advanced civilizations, the aliens' attention returned again and again to the story of Elias and Lyra. Small acts of care, patience, and guidance had left a deeper impression than power or weapons could ever have. Elias felt a mix of awe and humility. The vastness of the galaxy, with its countless species and technologies, suddenly seemed smaller because of the universal power of kindness. He understood something profound: actions, not words alone, could communicate humanity's true nature. The alien extended a hand, and a floating device hovered between them. It projected a soft, glowing light, showing images of the galaxy, but also symbols that mirrored Lyra's glowing patterns. Elias watched carefully, realizing that this was an offer, not of weapons, not of domination, but of friendship and shared knowledge. Lyra touched the images lightly, her wings shimmering with light, and made soft musical trills. The alien responded with flowing gestures, acknowledging her presence and her role in this first contact. Elias realized that Lyra was not just a passive participant, she was a bridge, a living testament to the power of trust and cooperation between species. Elias stepped closer, careful not to crowd the alien. I helped Lyra," he said, pointing to her and then to himself. He used simple gestures, miming their journey, showing how he guided her through the mountains and sheltered her in the cave. The alien observed, tilting its head slightly, and then responded with a gesture that seemed like understanding and respect. Minutes passed in quiet observation. Elias and Lyra stood side by side, small figures beneath a fleet of advanced starships, yet their presence carried weight. The aliens had judged humans, not by weapons or size, but by actions, by heart. And in this judgment, humanity had been recognized as capable of deep courage, empathy, and ingenuity. The holographic display shifted again, showing images of other species, advanced technology, and distant worlds. Yet the aliens returned to the story of Elias and Lyra repeatedly. It was a reminder that the universe valued qualities that transcended physical might. Patience, care, and cleverness mattered more than brute strength. Elias felt a deep sense of responsibility. If one human could leave this impression, imagine what humanity as a whole could achieve. He glanced at Lyra, who looked up at him with eyes full of pride and gratitude. She had survived, yes, but together, they had shown that humans were worthy of attention, respect, and partnership. Then, the alien made a gesture Elias recognized as an invitation. It extended its hand toward the cave, signaling that they wished him to join their platform, to step forward into a new world of understanding. Elias glanced at Lyra, who nodded, her wings trembling slightly with excitement. He realized that this was not only a personal invitation, but a chance for humanity to make its first true mark on the interstellar stage. Elias stepped forward slowly, maintaining calm and showing respect. The alien lowered a portion of the holographic platform to the ground, allowing him to ascend safely. Lyra stayed at the edge of the cave, her small form glowing faintly, watching him with pride. Once on the platform, Elias looked around in awe. The technology was unlike anything he had imagined. Holographic displays projected entire star systems in real time. Lights pulsed in rhythm with unseen calculations, and the alien beings moved with fluid grace, their gestures conveying intelligence and calm authority. "Welcome," one of the aliens said in melodic tones, the meaning conveyed through gestures and light patterns. "You have proven that humans are worthy." Elias felt a surge of pride. "Thank you," he said simply, using gestures to indicate respect and gratitude. I only helped Lyra." The alien's eyes shimmered. Then a series of holographic images appeared, showing humans on Earth, cities, forests, oceans, and the endless diversity of life. Elias realized that the aliens were beginning to understand humanity through the lens of his simple act of care. They were connecting his courage and empathy to the potential of his entire species. Lyra's glowing hands touched the images gently, adding her own symbols and patterns. The aliens observed carefully, understanding that she had been guided by him, and that human intelligence and compassion had shaped her experience. Elias felt a deep warmth in his chest. The bond between species, fragile yet profound, was being built before his eyes. The alien made another gesture, offering a glowing sphere. Elias understood immediately: knowledge, friendship, and the opportunity to share in a wider universe. He accepted it carefully, feeling the weight of responsibility and the promise of new possibilities. Minutes passed, the silence filled with understanding. Elias realized that first contact had never been about weapons, diplomacy, or politics. It had been about heart, small, courageous acts that transcended language, species, and distance. He looked at Lyra, still glowing near the cave entrance, and then at the alien beings. Humanity had been noticed, valued, and respected. Not for what it could destroy, but for what it could protect, care for, and create. As the sun climbed higher, Elias felt a deep sense of purpose. The universe was vast, full of wonders and challenges, but human qualities, empathy, courage, intelligence, had a power that no technology alone could match. He had shown it in the mountains, in the snow, in the quiet moments by a fire. And now that story had reached across the stars. Elias stepped down from the platform, returning to the cave where Lyra waited. She glowed softly, wings fluttering with excitement. He smiled at her. "We did it, Lyra. We showed them. Humans are something special." She tilted her head and cooed softly, a sound full of pride and joy. Elias realized that this moment, small as it might seem, was the beginning of humanity's story among the stars. A story not of conquest, but of courage, empathy, and connection. The alien fleet hovered above the mountains, observing, acknowledging, and retreating slightly to give Elias and Lyra space. Elias felt the weight of the universe in that quiet acknowledgement. For the first time, he understood that humans had a role to play, not just on Earth, but among the stars. And as the wind whispered through the peaks, Elias knew that this was only the beginning. Tomorrow the galaxy would open its doors, and humanity, guided by its courage and heart, would step forward. The Koreth Mountains were silent once more, but the echoes of understanding, recognition, and hope lingered in the crisp morning air. Elias and Lyra had proven that even small acts of kindness could reach across worlds, and that humanity's true strength was in its heart. The morning sun stretched across the Koreth Mountains, melting the frost on the peaks and casting long shadows across the valleys. Elias, Van, and Lyra remained at the cave entrance, the warmth of the fire from last night long gone but replaced by the golden light of day. Above them, the alien fleet hovered, 30 starships moving in quiet formation, their soft hum filling the thin mountain air. Elias had barely slept. The events of the last 2 days, the climb, the snowstorm, the rescue, and the remarkable first contact with Lyra's people, had left him exhausted, yet exhilarated. He watched Lyra, who sat cross-legged on a flat rock, her wings folding neatly behind her as she traced glowing patterns in the snow with her tiny fingers. She looked serene, a reflection of the trust and bond they had formed. "Good morning, Lyra," Elias said softly. She tilted her head and cooed, a musical greeting he understood perfectly. Elias took a deep breath, staring at the fleet above. Today was different. Yesterday they had only observed and acknowledged him. Today, it seemed, they wanted more interaction, learning, and perhaps a deeper connection. A beam of soft light descended from the largest starship, forming a wide platform in the air. Elias stepped closer, motioning for Lyra to stay near the cave's entrance. She hesitated, her wings twitching nervously, but Elias knelt and placed a hand on her shoulder. "It's okay, Lyra. You've done your part, now it's my turn." She gave a small nod and a musical trill. Elias smiled and stepped onto the glowing platform, feeling the strange but gentle lift beneath his feet. The platform rose slowly, carrying him toward the largest starship. Inside, the space was vast, filled with soft light and holographic displays projecting distant star systems, civilizations, and worlds that Elias had only dreamed of. The aliens awaited him. Their tall, graceful forms moved with fluid elegance, their gestures conveying patience, curiosity, and intelligence. Elias raised his hands in greeting, a simple but universal gesture. One of the aliens stepped forward, pointing first to him, then to Lyra, then back to him again. Elias understood the meaning. He had brought the human's best qualities into focus: courage, empathy, and care. The alien produced a floating holographic device, projecting images of human achievements, cities, spacecraft, technology, and art. Yet amid all the advanced tools and inventions, the alien returned repeatedly to the story of Elias and Lyra. The journey through the mountains, the fire in the cave, the careful guidance, and the trust between them. Elias realized, with a swell of pride, that the universe judged a civilization not only by its technology or strength, but by its heart. The simple act of caring for another being, regardless of differences, had elevated humanity in the eyes of an interstellar civilization. The aliens extended the holographic device toward Elias, displaying a new set of images, worlds with problems, challenges, and opportunities. They were offering him a role, not as a soldier, not as a conqueror, but as a representative of human qualities, to learn, observe, and contribute. Elias understood. This was the beginning of humanity's participation in the wider galaxy. He felt a deep sense of responsibility. I will do my best," he said simply, using gestures and tone to convey sincerity. The aliens responded with flowing movements that Elias interpreted as trust and acceptance. They were acknowledging that humanity, despite its flaws, was capable of courage, care, and ingenuity. Lyra's small hands hovered over the device, glowing faintly. She traced symbols in the air, adding her perspective, her story, and her gratitude. Elias realized how integral she had been, not just as someone he helped, but as a bridge between species. Without her, first contact might have been impossible. Together, They had demonstrated the best of human qualities. The aliens then projected a three-dimensional map of several nearby star systems, showing the interconnectedness of civilizations, planets, and resources. Elias watched, absorbing the information. This knowledge was beyond anything humans had yet encountered, yet it was shared freely, a gesture of trust and cooperation. He understood that the galaxy was vast and full of wonders, but humans had a place here. Humanity could explore, learn, and contribute, not through force, but through collaboration, creativity, and empathy. The thought filled him with purpose. After what felt like hours, the aliens made a final gesture, a symbol representing recognition, approval, and invitation. Elias understood. He had been offered a position as humanity's first interstellar ambassador, a role that would allow him to connect with civilizations far beyond Earth, to share human ingenuity, compassion, and resilience. Elias felt a deep swell of emotion. He thought of Earth, of his home, of the mountains where it had all begun, and of the small, courageous alien girl who had changed everything. Lyra's presence, her trust, and her connection had opened doors that no human could have opened alone. He stepped down from the platform, returning to the mountain cave where Lyra waited. She glowed softly in the morning light, her wings fluttering in excitement. Elias knelt beside her, placing a hand gently on her shoulder. "We did it, Lyra," he said. "We showed them. Humans can care, can think, can be brave." Lyra's musical trill filled the quiet mountains, a sound full of joy and pride. She touched his cheek lightly, a gesture of thanks that transcended language. Elias smiled, understanding that their journey had created a bond that would resonate across the galaxy. Above, the fleet hovered in silent formation, observing, acknowledging, and slowly retreating to maintain space. The humans below were small, yet their actions had made a difference that reached across the stars. Elias felt the weight of this responsibility, but also the thrill of possibility. He realized something profound. Courage, empathy, and intelligence were universal languages. They could cross species, worlds, and civilizations. Humanity's future in the galaxy would not depend solely on technology or power. It would depend on its heart, its creativity, and its willingness to care. The mountains were quiet once more, the storm of the past days fully past. Elias and Lyra walked together along the cave entrance, the snow crunching softly beneath their feet. She glowed faintly, wings folding neatly behind her. Elias felt a deep connection not only to her but to humanity's potential, a potential now recognized by civilizations far beyond Earth. He thought about the future. Earth would learn, humans would explore, and one day they would reach far beyond their small planet. But it would not be weapons or conquest that defined humanity. It would be the courage to act with care, the intelligence to solve problems, and the empathy to connect with others, even those from distant worlds. Elias and Lyra spent the rest of the day preparing for departure. The aliens had indicated that further communication would follow, teaching humans about the galaxy, its civilizations, and opportunities. Elias gathered samples from the mountains, sketches of the cave, and notes about their journey. Lyra traced glowing symbols in the snow, preserving the memory of their adventure in a language that only the stars might fully understand. As night fell, the sky above the Koreth Mountains filled with stars, more than Elias had ever seen. The alien fleet hovered above, shining softly, a reminder of the vast universe and humanity's new role within it. Elias gazed upward, filled with awe, gratitude, and determination. "Tomorrow," he whispered to Lyra, "we begin a new chapter, not just for us but for all humans." She cooed softly, a sound that seemed to echo among the peaks. Her glow brightened, reflecting the stars above, as if signaling the start of something greater than either of them could have imagined. Elias realized that the galaxy would watch humanity closely, but he was no longer uncertain. Humans had shown courage, care, and ingenuity. They had helped a lost child, and in doing so, had opened doors to the stars. For the first time, he understood the depth of human potential. Strength was not in weapons or power. It was in the ability to protect, to care, to understand, and to create connections across differences. Humanity's first steps into the galaxy would be guided by these principles, and that made all the difference. The Koreth Mountains were silent, snow sparkling under starlight. Elias and Lyra sat together at the cave entrance, watching the fleet slowly retreat, leaving behind a sense of hope, acknowledgement, and possibility. The universe had noticed humanity, and now it awaited the next step. Elias felt a thrill of excitement mixed with calm determination. He knew the journey ahead would be long and full of unknowns, but humanity was ready. Through small acts of courage and care, they had proven themselves. The stars above no longer seemed distant. They felt like a place where humans belonged. And in that quiet mountain cave, a human and a small alien girl looked up at the sky together, ready to begin a journey that would change not just their lives, but the fate of humanity among the stars. For Elias, the Koreth Mountains were no longer just a place of survival. They were the starting point of humanity's first great adventure in the galaxy. And for the first time, he felt the certainty that humans could shine brightly among the stars, not through force, but through heart, courage, and the simple yet profound acts of kindness that defined them.